Good afternoon. We are Created Equal. We're here today to create conversation about abortion. But today we're on campus with the Boilermakers for Life. Because there was an event last night, we also want to recap for you as well. So as you're walking by and seeing the signs, please feel free to come up and ask your questions. But first, we'd like to share a bit about what took place last night.
Hi, my name is Megan. I am the president of Boilermakers for Life, the pro-life organization on campus. We did just want to recap a little bit, like Seth said, for those who weren't at the debate last night. It was very interesting. Dreher v. Sanders talking about, is abortion a moral injustice? Probably the most shocking thing that I found during the debate was when Mr. Dreher asked Dr. Sanders when life begins. And Dr. Sanders replied saying that it's irrelevant, which I think really is the crust of the issue when we're talking about abortion, because after all, if it's not a human, if the preborn is not human, then the pro-life position really doesn't have 2 feet to stand on. We have no right to tell a woman what to do with their body if the preborn are not human. But if the preborn are human, as science suggests, then we do have quite a bit of ground to stand on, and in fact there's no justification for abortion. So the fact that he would suggest that when life begins asking that question is irrelevant, I kind of find that it's a little, it interrupted the debate, I would say.
Yeah, there was, honestly, for those who were there last night, you saw the debate, you heard the arguments, and there are many things we could say in recap, but one interesting point Dr. Sanders did make is he made the comment that we hear, I think Megan and I hear a lot on campuses like these, and that's how is it fair for men to walk away? Shouldn't men be responsible? I think Megan and I, we find that as a very important point of common ground with Dr. Sanders. We both believe that men should be responsible. If men engage in sex, it's not fair for them to walk away and leave the woman alone. But there's an interesting inconsistency there. Why would we say men should be responsible, but say women can kill their babies? As Christopher Kazor, Loyola Marymount professor, has said, no man has ever gotten off of paying child support because the condom broke. We expect him to follow the consequences of his actions. And the same is true for women. And so that's what the debate was about last night, trying to bring the two sides together to engage in the conversation. But really, as great of an event as that was, we know that was just one venue. We're here today because not everyone was at the debate last night. I mean, maybe you watched online, maybe you saw it, maybe you were there with us. But today we're here to continue the debate on campus. Because this is not just about Dr. Sanders or me or Megan, what we believe. This is about every one of us reevaluating our beliefs. Do we really have good reasons to believe that the pro-choice agenda is right, or the pro-life agenda is right? What is the basis for our arguments? That's why we're here today. Megan, why would you say you oppose abortion?
Primarily just because it's the intentional killing of an innocent human being. We know that scientifically that at fertilization that we have a unique whole human being based on the law of biogenesis and other embryology textbooks. And then on a philosophical level, I would say that humans are valuable and that it's never okay to kill an innocent human being. So really that's my position, comes down to it's wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human, Seth.
You know, one of the saddest moments for me last night, Megan, was on what you just said. We know they're humans. We know all humans have value. A student walked up to me afterward, and he was saying, I don't agree with you, my position that I gave. And I asked why. He said, because I don't believe humans have value. So I asked him, do you have value? And he said, no. And that to me is really heartbreaking, that we know there are people who hold to this view that even they don't have value. You and I know that every single human being matters. It doesn't matter whether you're black or white or rich or poor, male or female. Every single one of us matters, and that's what your club is doing here on campus, trying to share that view.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add to that and say it's unfortunately that seems to be a pretty common argument that I hear from people is that we're not valuable. In fact, just earlier today I was talking to a guy and I asked him about abortion, and he said, well, do you eat meat? And I said, yes. I said, what's your point? And he said, well, what's the difference between dismembering a human and dismembering a chicken? And I said, I think there's a big difference. And we kind of went through, there's a big difference between a Harold burger and a hamburger, and a difference between a hit and run with a squirrel and a hit and run with a toddler. He actually eventually changed his position, which was really awesome. But there does seem to be this inconsistency where it's not necessarily enough to be human for a lot of people. It doesn't seem that we're inherently valuable, which both of our organizations would refute.
Absolutely, yeah. And this, another interesting note is, so last night we had the debate with Dr. Sanders. Today we're having the campus-wide discussion. But we also had, last week you had another debate with, I believe it was Jamie Hugh, a research assistant here. One of the things I found most interesting about that debate as I watched it was when she said that human life begins at quickening. For those who don't know, quickening is when the mother can feel the baby moving inside of her. And this really is an old idea that used to be held by people before we had the benefits of ultrasonography and embryoscopies. But now we know that's not true. But what other takeaways did you have from that debate?
I was really excited that she was looking to find common ground, and we actually continued our conversation for a good 30 minutes after we left the studio and kind of talked about where we could find common ground and where we differed. But I was just really shocked by we couldn't, similar to Dr. Sanders, I suppose, we couldn't agree that life begins at fertilization. She just, she wasn't interested in looking at the science that I was presenting, and I really tried to encourage her to maybe, look at some embryology textbooks and things like that. But it seems today that there's a lot of people who just aren't interested in looking at the science, which I find a little comical, because a lot of times the pro-life position is unfortunately labeled as pseudoscience or lacking scientific evidence, when a large percentage of our cases actually based on science, like the law of biogenesis and embryology, medical textbooks, and even a lot of pro-abortion candidates like David Boonin support this idea that life does begin at fertilization. So.
You're exactly right. David Boonin says in his book, Defense of Abortion, that a human fetus is a human being at a very young stage of development. Peter Singer says that you can be very clear what a human being is. It's when a sperm and egg unite. He's very clear in his book, Practical Ethics. So it is shocking. And I know you took notes to your debate, and last night I had quotes from embryology textbooks. I had peer-reviewed papers saying that an embryo is a human organism. And yet we do hear these things like, well, you don't like science. But that's not true. You and I really know that it's not, we're just not cherry picking. We want to really know the truth. Because if this is not a human, Megan and I, the team at Create Equal and Boilermakers for Life, we're just wasting our time. And we are actually doing more than wasting our time. We're actually harming people by telling them not to do something that is not immoral. But if that's a human, it is wrong. So let's just recap briefly before we close. Recap, what is the pro-life case? Why is abortion wrong?
I would essentially just break it down to a syllogism, Seth, in saying that it's intentionally wrong to kill innocent humans. Abortion intentionally kills innocent humans, so therefore abortion is immoral. That's really our case today.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why we're here. That's why Megan's Club is here every week on campus, every day probably. So, but as you're walking by and listening to us today, anyone standing here is ready to engage in the dialogue. Please just come up to us, ask us any questions you have, even if you want to just express your views, maybe why you think this is inappropriate. Dr. Sanders did say last night what Megan's Club does here is child pornography, which is interesting for two reasons. Number one, he admits this involves a child. That's very, very interesting here. He would reject that that's a human, yet he said it's child porn, because this, I think he knows, is a child. But we clearly know this is not pornography. Pornography is designed to stimulate a sexual response. This is not. When you look at pictures of dead Jews in the concentration camps, it's not porn. When you see pictures of the African Americans lynched during slavery or the civil rights movement, that's not porn. It's a stark reality. So please, as you walk by, share with us your thoughts, your questions. We're here for the campus dialogue to continue. And once we leave, Megan's Club will stay here. The dialogue will not end, because your club is committed to making effective communication on this topic happen.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what people have to say on this topic. I think, I hope at least we'll have a lot of great conversations with people. Do you have any comments on what do you think about abortion? No? Okay. Yeah, me neither. Okay. He does not support abortion. I think it.
Why is that? You want to talk to the microphone? Here, come on.
No, I'm good. I don't care to be important.
Why do you think that women should have a right to their bodies?
Okay, so I think what we heard there was he was saying that Megan's group should not be doing this. They don't have a right to show these kinds of pictures on campus. How would you respond?
I think that it would be actually an injustice for us not to show these images. I've had many women, unfortunately, come up to me who've had abortions, who have said, I wish I had seen these images. I wish I had known before I'd had my abortion, because I had just been told that these were a clump of cells, which we can clearly see by images like this, that this is not just a clump of cells. This is no more a clump of cells than Seth is a clump of cells. So not only educating people, but I think it's the only way that the victims really have a voice. So it would be an injustice for us not to show these images.
Great point. Well, thank you. We will stay here and keep taking questions from anyone who walks on by. We are created equal, Boilermakers for life. Thank you. And remember that this all comes down to a really radical truth, a radical idea that all humans are equal. You can say these aren't humans, but then your debate is with scientific fact. If you say the world is flat, we know you're wrong. The earth is not flat. If you say they're not humans, you are wrong. Scientific evidence has proven they are human beings. But you can hold a view of inequality. That's your choice. It's a tragic choice, but it's up to you.
Seth, the thing that I do find interesting about these images, for example, when the gentleman walked by, he was saying that, he didn't like these images. And many people have commonly said that they are disturbed by the images, or they're hard to look at, or things like that, or even the idea of we should be restricting abortion, so that I think a lot of times people inherently know that abortion is wrong. Whether they admit that people should have a right to do it or not, they admit that it shouldn't be something that we're using as birth control. So I'd really like to hear some from people this afternoon on why they think it shouldn't be used as birth control if it's not the intentional killing of a human.
That's a fantastic question, because they're admitting something there, right? That this should be rare, this shouldn't be happening. Well, why?
Yeah.
If it kills a human, you're saying it should be something that some people choose, that it's a tragic thing. You're admitting something is wrong here. So that's a fantastic question. Look forward to hearing answers.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll get some answers.
Sure.
About the drop in crime rate, like that argument that abortions contributed to the drop in crime rate.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So there is Freakonomics. Freakonomics is a book that has made the assertion, which many people have read on campuses like this, that after abortion was made legal throughout America in 1973, the crime rate has dropped. Because a lot of babies are being aborted now, that their socioeconomic situation may have led to a life of crime. This begs the question, though. Begging the question is assuming what you've not yet proven, because it assumes that this is not a human. If this is a human, then far from lowering the crime rate, following Roe versus Wade, we had 7 years after Roe versus Wade, more than 1.5 million murders every year, killing of innocent human beings. Today we have 900,000 every single year, still nearly 1 million. So if they're humans, it actually raised the crime rate by killing innocent humans, but they're assuming they're not humans, so they beg the question. They need to prove that. So yes, it may have lowered other types of crimes, but our killing of innocent humans has risen. That's a really good question, but unfortunately it begs the question.
When the soul enters the body.
Okay, we have another question. Ensoulment. Do you want to talk about ensoulment?
I'd be happy to, but I guess my first question is with the idea of separating church from state, right? So are we basing laws on the idea of ensoulment, or would you base a law on ensoulment?
I think that has a little bit
or
to
just
do.
In general,
It has a little bit to do with whether that baby has a will, like a mind, will, and emotions.
Okay. Oh, I understand. Okay. So, do you think it would be appropriate to err on the side of caution if you don't know when ensoulment occurs?
Yeah, of course, but is there any scientific proof that shows?
No, see, I think Meg is making a good distinction here, because ensoulment's a question of philosophy or religion, right? So when you ask, what is this? That's a different category. This is the scientific category. What is a human? Ensoulment belongs in the category of philosophy and religion. So the law doesn't take a position on that view of ensoulment. For example, the law has no position on whether or not college students have souls, but the law protects them, right? So we don't have to prove they have souls to know they're the kind of things that ought to be protected by law. So we can discuss ensoulment, and various religions have different views on that. But what's important to remember is we stay in the right category. The category is what is this, human or not? And ensoulment is a different category of philosophy. So we know they're humans, and we know the law protects humans regardless of ensoulment. So good question. Good question. Anyone else have a question walking by? Feel free to come up. You can use the microphone to express your views. If not, Megan and I and the team will be here all afternoon, though. So.
In vitro?
Oh, okay. We have another question. In vitro fertilization.
Do you support it if all the babies are used that are conceived?
So in vitro fertilization is not, I would say, remember our case today. It is wrong to intentionally kill innocent humans. So in vitro fertilization, if we're done in the way that you're suggesting, where the babies are created in the petri dish, all of them are transferred to the mother's uterus, that would not violate that law, that principle. But as I think you probably know, and I think I might have mentioned this in a debate last night, I've spoken to, in Columbus, Ohio, I had an interview with a fertilization doctor at a reproductive center. He explained to me how he does IVF, where they create nearly 20 babies, and at least 12 of them are immediately discarded afterward. That is intentionally killing innocent humans. So even if the practice doesn't violate the law, my concern with IVF is even if by definition does not need to violate it, in practice it often does, and that's our concern, because our position again today is intentionally killing innocent humans. So, but yeah, thank you. We'll be here for the rest of the afternoon, so please feel free to ask us your questions, and we'll be back on later. Thank you.